Okay, so here's the bill history. In 2009's General Session, Senate Bill 654 went into effect, amending Correctional Services Article 7-501 with B to read, quote, an inmate convicted of a violent crime committed on or after October 1st, 2009 would not become eligible for mandatory supervision release resulting from earned dimunition credits until after the inmate becomes eligible for parole under 7-301C and D of this title. End quote. It was drafted in response to the investigation of a late 2006 murder in Laurel, Maryland. Roberta Roper, founder of the MCVRC, and Russell Butler, attorney, respectfully advocated for the family of the victims of their crime. Through diligent research, their organization determined that the murderer in the aforementioned case was released by a mandatory supervision release, MSR, before being mandated eligible for parole on his term of confinement. Senator Norman Stone sponsored this bill. As you will hear Mr. Butler in his audio transcripts of the reading and introduction of Senate Bill 654, he clearly states his not having much knowledge about diminution credits or release practices in general in Maryland when he stated, I do not even know how this is mathematically possible. It seems as if one would look to be at least aware, in a legal sense, of the factors of a law that you are suggesting to be amended, enacted, or abolished, especially in the profession of an attorney. But what happened could have been easily explained if Mr. Butler would have simply picked up a phone and dialed many of public officials within the Department of Public Safety and Correctional Services to determine the details of the, quote, loophole release, end quote, that they intended on closing. The credits from the first sentence that were accumulated before he was paroled out were calculated along with credits from the crime that constituted the parole violation. By also working and earning additional credits, Mr. Banks was released on the new entire term of confinement, quote, backup time plus new sentence, end quote, by diminution credits prior to serving one half of his entire sentence. Someone within the department had enough foresight to see that, in application, this bill would have a completely adverse effect, a huge fiscal impact. The Department of Public Safety and Correctional Services originally opposed Senate Bill 654. The bill promised no fiscal impact, therefore somehow it passed into law. The problem lied and still does lie within the misinterpretation of the legislative intent behind the drafting of Senate Bill 654. The legislative intent was to close a loophole, so who misinterpreted it then? Well, the governing body of interpreting any changes to the law governing diminution credits is the commitment unit of the DPSCS. The long-standing director of that unit is Miss Jody Stouffer. I was fortunate enough to speak with her over the phone recently and explain to her that someone in her unit had made a mistake in interpreting the law and subsequently misapplied it to the wrong class of prisoners. Within, quote, an inmate may not become eligible for MSR until after the inmate becomes eligible for parole, end quote. The two words, quote, until after, end quote, describe a day that will never arrive in a case where the inmate is serving a non-parolable sentence for a violent crime. Ms. Stouffer informed me that her office just passes on information and does not interpret law. Although we can determine intent by examining the legislative history, in misapplication, this is exactly what is happening. Prisoners with non-parolable sentences for violent crimes committed on or after October 1st, 2009 are currently and have since October 1st, 2009 been serving 100% of their sentences. I am one of them. I just served my 5 years day for day because of this misinterpretation. Also, the overwhelming contradictions to all of the preceding and superseding laws governing diminution credit eligibility. In contents of the 2011 report, Maryland Diminution Credit System, it clearly states the types of inmates who are ineligible to receive or earn diminution credits, and non-parolable sentences are not included. In fact, it actually states that, quote, an inmate serving a sentence that is by statute non-parolable may still earn diminution credits. It goes on furthermore to state, nothing in law prohibits the awarding of diminution credits on a non-parolable sentence, end quote. On the diminution credit eligibility chart, it notes Correctional Service Article 7-501B and summarizes it as basically, quote, basically after having served one half of the inmate's sentence, end quote. Judicially, these cases have plateaued, with the public opinion being issued in the favor of the Department of Public Safety Correctional Services position and interpretation of Maryland Annotated Code Correctional Services Article 7-501B, and therefore continuing to cause inmates sentenced to non-parolable sentences to serve 100% of their sentences, and therefore excessively confining these inmates. Also, the taxpayers that are footing the bill of misallocated funds within the department, remember, Senate Bill 654 promised no fiscal impact. So what is the projected fiscal impact of the misinterpretation since the levees broke? The projected fiscal impact due to the misinterpretation/misapplication of Correctional Service Article 7-501B, with the most common violent crime conviction, along with a non-parolable sentence, being for the use of a handgun in the commission of a violent crime or felony. This is the most prevalent sentence of the prisoner that is being excessively confined due to this misinterpretation. UHCVF is the anagram for use of a handgun in the commission of a violent crime or felony. Is a mandatory minimum sentence, and therefore a sentence that cannot be collaterally attacked on appeal or post-conviction to modify. Turn on the news. I challenge you to project your own numbers. All I am looking for is something significantly more than the 3 inmates who were cited in the Maryland Parole Commission data. UHCVF can mean using a handgun during a robbery, a shooting, a kidnapping, a murder. Well, by drug distribution being the felony, having a handgun in the commission of, so a gun and drugs. This gives us a palette of how many convictions may stick over the course of the year throughout the entire state of Maryland, not just Baltimore. So a modest number that I projected was 200 inmates. How much does it cost per year for taxpayers to house, clothes, medically support an inmate? Right now it's about $33,000 per year. So with the average length of excessive confinement averaging out at 18 months, you have to do 18 months, which is 1.5 years times 33,000. You get $49,500. That's the average per inmate misallocated funding going down the drain that wasn't originally drafted for. And we do that times the 200 inmates, so at 49,500 times 200, you get 9,900,000. So that's over the course of one cycle. You understand? So every year we have this number perpetuates annually, but mind you that 9,900,000 that was not legislatively accounted for, nor was it approved or intended to be allocated at all, let alone to be wasted by causing prisoners to be held against their will and have their constitutional rights violated. This is a matter that needs to be spotlighted and dealt with in Annapolis in 2018's general session. This needs to be turned into law if we don't want to repeal Correctional Service 7-501B with respects to the Maryland Crime Victims Resource Center, hard work and protection of the victims of the crime of Mr. Lawrence Banks, then we could at least amend in which what I have drafted and seeking sponsorship to have dealt with and amended for 2018 session. Thank you. Thank you very much for your time, and I look forward to seeing or hearing from you very shortly. Thank you. Ricky Manning, signing off.